They say betrayal hurts most when it comes wearing your family's face, and I learned that truth the night my cousin ruined my engagement. I still remember the sound, the clinking of glasses, laughter echoing through the hall. And then silence. Her voice cut through the crowd like a blade. Grant deserves to know who she really is. My heart stopped before the music did. Everyone turned toward me. My fiancé's eyes full of doubt, my mother frozen, my grandmother whispering a prayer under her breath. And there stood Cora, my cousin, my supposed sister in spirit, with fake tears rolling down her cheeks, holding a phone that would destroy me. "Lena's been lying to you," she said softly, like she was doing me a favor. And in that moment, I felt my whole life unravel in front of hundreds of people who once called me family. I wanted to scream, to defend myself, but I couldn't breathe. The world blurred. The ring slipped off my finger. Respect, gone in a heartbeat. That night, everyone saw my humiliation. But what they didn't see was the storm I was about to become. Growing up, I thought my family was everything. Sundays meant laughter around my grandmother's long oak table, the smell of roasted chicken, and stories that stretched across generations. My mother, Evelyn, believed in tradition. She said a woman's worth was measured by how she carried the family's name. So I carried it with pride and silence. Cora and I were always side by side, cousins by blood, sisters by habit. She had that kind of beauty that made people stop mid-sentence. I had the kind of quiet that made people forget I was even there. Still, I loved her like my own shadow. When we were children, she'd whisper, "We're unstoppable together." And I believed her. At every family gathering, Cora sparkled. My Uncle Harold would toast to her charm, my aunt would brag about her job, and my mother would force a smile beside me. "You could learn from Cora," she'd say gently, not realizing each word was another crack in my confidence. I laughed it off, pretending it didn't sting, but deep down, I kept asking myself what made me less worthy of their pride. When I brought home Grant, my fiancé, everyone's attention finally shifted, at least for a while. Grant was kind, thoughtful, and respectful, exactly the kind of man my mother prayed for. For the first time, I felt like I'd done something right in their eyes. My grandmother even said, "Lena, you've finally found your balance." But that balance was fragile, too fragile to survive envy disguised as love. Cora congratulated me with a hug that felt rehearsed. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "You got lucky, Lena," she said, her tone sweet but sharp underneath. I laughed it off again. I was used to her comments, her subtle reminders that I was never meant to shine too bright. As the engagement approached, I started noticing the smallest things, how she insisted on helping me pick the dress, how she handled my messages to the planner, how she always made sure to help Grant with the guest list. Everyone saw her as generous, supportive, perfect. I saw her differently. I saw her control, her quiet need to stay in the center. Still, I stayed silent. My mother would have called it maturity. I called it survival. One evening, during dinner, Cora leaned close and whispered, "Family is about trust, isn't it?" Her words felt strange, heavy, almost rehearsed. When I asked what she meant, she just smiled. "Nothing," she said. "You'll understand soon." That night, as I washed the dishes alone, I looked at the reflection of our house in the dark kitchen window. It looked perfect from the outside. But behind those walls were cracks no one dared to see. And for the first time, I felt it in my bones, something inside my family was about to break. It started small, almost invisible, like a shadow passing over a sunny day. After my engagement, everything seemed perfect on the surface. My family was proud, Grant was attentive, and for once, I felt seen. But perfection doesn't last long in a house built on comparison. It began with Cora's comments, subtle, smiling daggers wrapped in compliments. "Oh, Lena's ring is so simple. But that's her style, understated." At first, I laughed. Everyone did. But over time, the laughter began to sound different, less amused, more curious. Then came the whispers. I could feel them before I heard them. At the dinner table, in the kitchen, behind closed doors. My aunt's voice one night was sharp and certain. "Cora would have been a better match for Grant, don't you think? She's more his type." Grant and I started arguing over nothing. He'd show me texts from unknown numbers, screenshots of conversations I'd never had. "Who's Daniel?" he asked once, his tone brittle. My heart dropped. I didn't even know a Daniel. "Grant, that's not me." "Someone's lying." But he only sighed, rubbing his temples. Lena, your family's worried. Just be honest with me. Honest? I'd built my whole life on honesty. It was Cora who built hers on attention. I began to notice how easily people believed her. Her tears, her tremble, her perfectly timed apologies. Whenever something went wrong, she'd rush to my side, pretending to comfort me while feeding everyone else a new rumor. Lena's just stressed. You know how emotional she gets. One afternoon, during a family brunch, she accidentally opened her phone's gallery in front of my mother, revealing a photo of me hugging a male coworker at a company event. The image was innocent, but she gasped as if she'd caught me committing a crime. Oh no, Aunt Evelyn, I didn't mean for you to see that, she said dramatically. I just hope Grant doesn't misunderstand. I watched my mother's eyes cloud over with quiet disappointment. Lena, she whispered, this isn't like you. I wanted to scream that it wasn't me, that the moment was twisted, the intention poisoned. But in our family, appearances were stronger than truth. The distance grew. Grant stopped calling as much. My mother's affection became formal. Even my grandmother started asking cautious questions, her trust cracking with every rumor Cora planted. And through it all, Cora's halo shone brighter. She was the good cousin, the one who cared enough to protect the family name from my mistakes. Then came the final blow. One evening, Grant invited both families over for a small dinner. I thought it was just another gathering, until he stood up mid-meal, face pale, hands trembling. Lena, he said, someone sent me proof that you've been lying to me for months. I froze. What proof? Cora pulled out her phone, eyes glistening. I didn't want to show this, she said softly. But it's better than watching you deceive everyone. She opened a chat, messages supposedly between me and another man. Flirty, intimate, undeniable. My name was there. My photo. But not my words. I swear, that's not me. I cried. My voice cracked, echoing through the quiet room. My mother looked torn between belief and shame. Grant couldn't even meet my eyes. Cora pretended to cry. I just couldn't stay silent, she whispered. I love this family too much. And in that instant, I saw it, her satisfaction hidden behind her trembling lip. Something broke inside me that night, not just my engagement, but the illusion of family itself. Because the truth wasn't that she wanted to protect our image. She wanted to be the image. And she would destroy me to have it. You can't always hear jealousy. Sometimes, it whispers sweetly in your ear while it cuts you from behind. After my engagement to Grant, I thought my life had finally settled into something beautiful. My mother beamed with pride every time she mentioned his name, and my grandmother even started planning the guest list before I did. For once, I wasn't the quiet shadow in family gatherings, I was the reason for celebration. But celebration doesn't last long when envy lives under the same roof. Cora began her performance slowly, like a professional actress rehearsing her lines. She'd compliment me in public, then twist those words into poison when no one else was listening. Lena, you've really outdone yourself, she'd say with a tight smile. You must be thrilled Grant didn't mind your simple taste. Everyone laughed. I laughed too, because in my family, laughter was survival. But each remark left a mark. Small, invisible bruises on my dignity. Soon, I started noticing the favoritism again, the same kind I'd grown up with. Whenever I entered the room, the air shifted, as if I were intruding on someone else's spotlight. My Uncle Harold couldn't stop talking about how mature Cora had become. My aunt bragged about her new promotion. And my mother, always anxious to please, said, "You should take notes from Cora, dear. She knows how to carry herself." Carry herself. As if I'd been dragging myself through life instead. Still, I kept quiet. I told myself respect meant endurance. But Cora was relentless. One afternoon, she offered to help me choose my wedding dress. The boutique's mirror reflected us both, her flawless hair, my nervous smile. When the consultant asked for an opinion, Cora sighed dramatically. "It's nice," she said. "If you're going for something modest." The consultant's polite grin faded, and I felt my cheeks burn. I chose another gown that day, not because I liked it better, but because I wanted her approval, a habit I should have broken years ago. But her games didn't stop there. A few weeks later, at a family lunch, I noticed whispers, strange glances between my cousins. My phone buzzed with a message from Grant. "Did you really say that about me?" Attached was a screenshot of a text thread, One where I complained about him being boring, too ordinary. My stomach twisted. The messages were fake, but the damage was real. When I showed Cora, she acted shocked. "Oh, Lena, maybe your phone got hacked. You should be more careful." Her tone was drenched in sympathy, but her eyes glimmered with victory. By then, even my mother started to doubt me. "You've been so distracted lately," she said one night. "Cora seems more focused than you." That sentence broke me more than the lies. My own mother believed her, not me. The tension grew thicker with every passing day. Grant became distant, the wedding plans slower. And through it all, Cora stayed close, too close. Helping him plan, texting him updates, whispering that she only wanted what was best for me. Then came the moment I'll never forget. During a dinner meant to finalize wedding details, Cora suddenly looked at Grant and said, "I wish I could tell you what I saw, but it would ruin everything." Grant's fork froze mid-A. "What do you mean?" She hesitated just long enough for every eye to turn toward her. "Maybe Lena should explain." My pulse quickened. "Explain what, Cora?" She sighed, eyes glistening with false pity. "I didn't want to say it like this, but I think you should know the truth before you marry her." The room fell silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. And then she said it, a lie so cruel, so precise, it shattered the table's illusion of peace. "Lena's been seeing someone else." I caught her myself. My mother gasped. Grant's face drained of color. I felt the floor tilt beneath me, disbelief, rage, humiliation all at once. "You're lying," I whispered. But she just smiled. "Am I?" In that moment, I realized the truth wasn't enough anymore. In my family, whoever cried first was believed. And Cora was already crying. After that dinner, something inside me cracked, but I didn't let it show. In my family, pain had to be dressed in silence, disguised behind polite smiles and steady hands. I told myself the truth would surface on its own. It never did. Instead, the whispers grew louder. The way people looked at me changed, a half smile here, a lingering stare there, like I'd become a story everyone already knew. At family gatherings, I could feel it, the distance. My mother avoided eye contact, embarrassed by what others said behind her back. My aunt whispered prayers for my lost path. Even my brother Mason, who'd once defended me, just sighed whenever the topic came up. "Lena," he said quietly, "sometimes it's better not to fight every rumor. Let time fix it." Time. That word used to sound like hope. Now it sounded like abandonment. Cora, of course, played her role perfectly. She'd check on me in front of others, tilting her head with false concern. "Are you okay, Lena? You look tired. I know how hard heartbreak can be." Her words cut deeper than any knife because she said them sweetly, just loud enough for others to hear. During our grandmother Ruth's birthday, I became the ghost in the room. Cora helped organize everything, moving gracefully between guests like she was the perfect hostess. My mother praised her endlessly. "Cora, dear, you've outdone yourself," she said, smiling with pride. I sat at the edge of the table, ignored, invisible. Every toast, every compliment, felt like another brick sealing me out of my own family. When it was time for group photos, my aunt whispered, "Maybe Lena should sit this one out, she doesn't look cheerful." I forced a smile anyway. But when I looked at the pictures later, I realized Cora had positioned herself right beside Grant, her hand casually resting on his shoulder. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed every word, every look, every small humiliation that I'd brushed aside. My silence had turned into their weapon. The next morning, Grant showed up unexpectedly at my house. He stood at the door, expression unreadable. "Lena, people are talking," he said. "I don't know what to believe anymore." My throat tightened. "You should believe me. You knew me before all this." He hesitated. Then why would Cora lie? That single question told me everything. He'd chosen her version of the truth over mine. I wanted to scream, to demand justice, but all that came out was a whisper. "Because she needs to be the hero, Grant. Even if it means turning me into the villain." He didn't reply. He just left, leaving the door half open, like my reputation. After that day, I stopped trying to explain myself. I stopped defending my name. But silence doesn't mean surrender, it means calculation. I started watching Cora the way she'd been watching me. How she checked her phone constantly, how her tone changed when certain names appeared on her screen. One evening, I caught a glimpse of her reflection in the mirror, smiling down at a message that wasn't meant for her family's eyes. My gut clenched. There was something she was hiding, something bigger than gossip. A few days later, Tara, our quiet family friend, pulled me aside after a get-together. Her eyes were hesitant, but her voice was steady. "Lena," she whispered, "you need to know something about Cora." My heart raced. "What is it?" She looked around nervously. "Not here. Just be ready. The truth's going to find her soon." That night, I stood by my window, staring at the dark sky reflected in the glass, the same sky that had witnessed my downfall. But for the first time, I didn't feel broken. I felt the storm brewing. And this time, it wasn't over me. It was coming for her. There's a silence that doesn't just fill a room. It swallows it whole. That's how it felt the night my world finally collapsed. It was supposed to be one of the happiest evenings of my life, the official engagement dinner, where both families would come together before the wedding. My grandmother insisted on hosting it at her estate, the same place where every family celebration had taken place for decades. "A family's unity must be witnessed," she had said. I wanted to believe her. The house shimmered with soft golden light that evening. Laughter echoed down the hallways. Glasses clinked. My mother smiled for the first time in weeks. For a brief, fragile moment, I let myself think, maybe the worst was behind me. Maybe the truth would somehow repair everything. Then Cora arrived. She walked in late, dressed like she was the star of the evening, not the guest. Every head turned as she entered, Grant's included. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to stay calm. I'd promised myself I wouldn't let her provoke me again. Throughout dinner, she laughed easily, charming every relative who had once doubted me. Even my grandmother praised her for her maturity. I sat quietly beside Grant, answering polite questions about the wedding plans that no longer felt real. Then, in the middle of dessert, Cora rose from her seat. Her glass in hand, she smiled sweetly. "Before we toast," she began, "there's something I think everyone deserves to know." I froze. The sound of her voice made my heart stop. Grant turned to her, confused. "Cora, what are you doing?" She put a hand on her chest, pretending to tremble. "I've been keeping a secret for weeks, and it's been tearing me apart. But I can't stay silent anymore. Not when I care about this family so much." Her tone, fragile, emotional, perfectly rehearsed, sent chills down my spine. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. "Lena," she said softly, "I didn't want to expose you like this, but you left me no choice." The room went silent. The only sound was the faint clinking of a spoon someone accidentally dropped. Cora projected something onto the screen, a series of messages, supposedly between me and another man. "I can't wait to see you again," the texts read. "Grant's too boring for me." My name, my photo, even my typing style, all fabricated, but perfectly done. I felt my knees weaken. "That's not real," I whispered. "Those aren't my messages." Grant stared at me, eyes clouded with doubt. "Lena, just tell the truth." "The truth?" My voice broke. "I am telling the truth." But Cora's crocodile tears fell on cue. "I didn't want to hurt her," she cried, "but she was deceiving all of us. I couldn't let her ruin Grant's life." My mother covered her face, whispering something under her breath. My grandmother looked away. The weight of their silence was worse than any accusation. Grant stood up. "I need some air," he said quietly, slipping off his ring. It hit the floor with a dull metallic thud. That sound, it echoed through my chest like a gunshot. I wanted to chase him, to make him see reason, but I couldn't move. My body felt frozen, trapped in the shame that now belonged to me, even though I had done nothing wrong. The whispers started again, some shocked, some pitying. My aunt muttered, "How could she do this?" My uncle shook his head, saying, "Disgraceful." Cora walked up to me, still pretending to wipe her tears. She leaned close enough that only I could hear her whisper, "You shouldn't have tried to outshine me, Lena. This family only has room for one of us." I stared at her, trembling. "You destroyed my life," I said quietly. Her lips curved into a smile. "No. You handed it to me." Then she walked away, into the arms of the very people who once called me their pride. That night, I became the outsider in my own bloodline. My mother couldn't even look at me. My grandmother went to her room without a word. And Cora? She stayed downstairs, soaking in their sympathy, as if she hadn't just ruined me. When I left the house, the night air felt sharp and cold. I sat alone in my car, staring at my trembling hands. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. There was nothing left inside me but a hollow ache, and something new. Something dark, steady, and patient. As I drove away, I looked back through the windshield, at the warm lights of the house that no longer felt like home. And that's when I made myself a promise. I might have lost everything, my name, my engagement, my family's respect, but she had taken it too easily. And one day, she'd learned that the quiet ones are the ones you should never humiliate. That night, my pain turned into purpose. My silence became strategy. And for the first time, I whispered to myself, "This isn't over, Cora. You started this. But I'll finish it." The night I drove away from that house, something in me hardened. It wasn't rage that flashed across my mind so much as a cold, precise clarity. Grief had been messy and loud. This would be careful and surgical. I would not beg for my name back. I would take it. I started small, the way you rebuild when you have nothing but time and a quiet resolve. I slept in shifts, eating at odd hours, replaying every glance, every phrase Cora had used. I made a list, not of revenge, but of facts I could prove. Screenshots, witnesses, timelines, the oddity of who always knew what and when. Facts didn't cry on cue. Facts didn't perform in front of a room. Facts killed stories. Tara became my first ally. She was timid, yes, but honest in ways the rest of our family had forgotten. Over coffee in her cramped kitchen, she slid an envelope across the table, copies of messages Cora had sent her, asking for help crafting the fake threads. "I didn't know what to do," Tara whispered, voice shaking. She showed me how to rewrite each line so it looked real. I looked at the paper and felt a small, vicious relief. Proof. I hired a digital forensic specialist, a woman who smelled of coffee and certainty. She taught me how electronic signatures worked and how screenshots could be manipulated. We traced metadata, recovered deleted drafts, and found inconsistencies in timestamps that didn't add up. Each file we recovered felt like a small victory, a nail hammered into a coffin of lies. It was expensive. It was humiliating. But I paid every invoice with the last of my savings and every tear I had left. At the same time, I rebuilt myself emotionally. I started therapy, a single room with soft light where I could stop pretending. I cut ties with people whose pity felt like poison. I let only truth-tellers near me. Mason called twice and left messages I never replied to. Grant's number stopped bothering me. The silence around those absences was no longer an ache. It was a canvas. I planned the reveal like a director stages a scene. It had to be public enough that no one could shrug it off, formal enough that the evidence could be presented and documented, and merciless enough that Cora's carefully curated image would crack. I considered legal avenues, defamation suits, demands for retraction, but I wanted something more immediate, visceral. The family's own witnesses, their own cheers, turned back on them with truth. My plan had 3 parts. First, the evidence, metadata, recovered drafts, Tara's signed statements. Second, witnesses, people who had seen Cora edit messages, the boutique consultant who remembered her staging the dress incident, the catering assistant who'd overheard her practice her protective speech. Third, the stage, a gathering where the family would be assembled, where Ruth's voice carried most weight and where my grandmother's pride could not simply be waved away. I knew the risk. If I failed, I'd be deeper in ruin than before. If I succeeded, Cora would be exposed and some of what was mine could be returned. There were nights I woke up with my heart pounding, hands shaking, whispering, "Am I cruel?" The honest answer was, I didn't know. What I did know was this: I deserved to be heard, and I was no longer willing to let tears and performances speak for me. I printed everything, organized it into folders with tabs and notes, rehearsed my words until they felt like breathing. Tara practiced delivering her testimony until she could say the names without flinching. The forensics report sat in a locked drawer, a cold, factual weapon. The worst part was waiting, and the strangest part was that waiting felt like power. I had been passive for too long. Now I controlled the timing. Tomorrow, at my grandmother's celebration, they would be gathered in one room, and for the first time since that night, I would be ready to speak. It was Ruth's birthday, our grandmother, the one who had always said, "A family without respect is a house built on sand." That night, Every branch of our fractured family tree was gathered under one roof again. Cora stood at the center, dazzling as ever, her laughter filling every quiet space. I watched from across the table, calm, silent, the kind of silence that made people underestimate you. I'd spent weeks preparing for this moment. Every lie she told was now documented, every whisper traced, every message authenticated. But none of it mattered unless I had the courage to speak. As dessert was served, my grandmother tapped her glass, smiling. "Before we end the evening," she said, "I'd like to give thanks for the people who keep this family together." She turned to Cora. "My sweet girl, you've been such a blessing lately. Always helping, always protecting." The irony stung like fire. Cora bowed her head modestly. "I just do what's right, Grandma." That was my cue. I rose slowly, the room falling into silence. "You're right, Grandma," I said softly. "Cora has done a lot for this family. In fact, she's been very busy." All eyes turned to me. My mother's lips parted, uncertain. Cora's smile flickered, just for a second. "I wasn't planning to speak tonight," I continued, "but I think we've been living under a misunderstanding, one built on performance and lies." Cora laughed lightly, feigning confusion. "Lena, what are you talking about?" I took out my phone and placed it on the table. The screen lit up, showing a folder labeled "The Truth." "Do you remember this, Cora?" I asked. "The night you showed everyone those messages, the ones that ruined my engagement." Her eyes darted toward Grant, who had been invited by Ruth at her insistence. His jaw tightened. I pressed play. A recording filled the room, Cora's voice, trembling yet unmistakable. I had to make it believable. If she looked perfect, I'd disappear. Grant needed to see she wasn't who he thought. Gasps broke through the room. Cora's face drained of color. That's fake," she shouted. I looked directly at her. "It's not. This was extracted from your phone's deleted files. The digital signature matches. The expert's report is here. You can all read it." Tara stood up from the corner, clutching a small USB drive. "It's true. I helped her fake those texts. I thought it was harmless. I didn't know she'd go this far." The room erupted. My aunt dropped her fork. My mother covered her mouth, whispering, "Oh my God." Grant stood, trembling, eyes wide with guilt. "You lied," he said, voice breaking. "You destroyed her for nothing." Cora's mask cracked completely. "You don't understand," she cried. "I did it for you. Everyone always adored Lena. Perfect, polite Lena. I was invisible." Her confession hung in the air like smoke. My grandmother's expression hardened. "Invisible," she repeated coldly. "Cora, respect is not earned by destroying others." Cora's tears turned desperate. "I only wanted to be seen." I stepped closer. "And now you are," I said quietly. "Seen for what you really are." The silence that followed was thunderous, the kind that changes the air itself. Every eye that once judged me now turned toward her. Every whisper that haunted me dissolved into disbelief and shame. Grant turned to me, his voice trembling. "Lena, I can't undo what I did, but I believe you now." I didn't answer. Some wounds are too deep for apology. Cora tried to speak again, but no one listened. My mother stood and crossed the room to me, tears glistening. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have believed you." I nodded, not in forgiveness, but in closure. As Cora fled the room, her heels clicking on the marble floor, I finally exhaled, years of humiliation spilling out in a single breath. The house that had once buried me in shame was now echoing with her downfall. Grandmother raised her glass again, her tone solemn this time. "The truth," she said, "may come late, but it never comes wrong." And in that moment, I realized something powerful. Revenge wasn't about destroying her. It was about reclaiming myself. The lights dimmed, the guests fell silent, and as I looked around the room, faces stunned, truths exposed, I knew one thing for certain. My silence had ended. And so had her reign. The night after the confrontation, the house that once buzzed with laughter felt like a tomb. No one spoke Cora's name. No one dared to. The truth had scorched everything she'd built, leaving behind only ashes of what once looked like perfection. I sat by the window in my old room, listening to the wind move through the trees, the same trees that had heard my cries months ago when everyone believed her lies. But this time, there were no tears. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that follows justice. Cora left town the next morning without a word. My uncle tried to defend her at first, but even he couldn't deny the evidence. The recordings, the reports, Tara's testimony, they were irrefutable. In one night, her empire of deceit crumbled. Grant reached out days later. He wanted to meet, to apologize in person. I agreed, but only for closure. When we met at the small cafe where we'd once planned our future, he looked like a man haunted by regret. Lena, he said softly, I believed the wrong person. I let you suffer for something you didn't do. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you find peace. I smiled faintly. I already have, I said. Because peace isn't something others give you, Grant, it's what you choose to take back. He nodded, tears in his eyes. For the first time, I didn't feel small standing in front of him. I felt free. At home, my mother tried to make amends in her own quiet way. She began leaving breakfast at my door, little gestures of guilt mixed with love. One morning, she sat beside me at the table and whispered, I should have believed my daughter before I believed appearances. I looked at her and said, respect doesn't come from silence, Mom. It comes from standing with the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. She took my hand and nodded, her eyes glistening. Grandmother Ruth, ever the pillar, gathered us all once more weeks later. Her voice was gentler this time, almost fragile. We cannot erase what happened, she said, but we can remember who suffered with dignity. Lena, you've reminded us that silence, when kept too long, becomes injustice. For once, the entire room listened, really listened. Life didn't return to what it was before. It became quieter, simpler, more honest. I moved to a new apartment, started fresh, built a life not defined by family reputation or approval but by peace. Some people called it isolation, I called it healing. Every so often, I still hear news about Cora, rumors of failed jobs, broken friendships. I don't gloat. I don't chase revenge anymore. Her downfall was never my victory, my truth was. Sometimes, late at night, I walk past that old estate and glance at the windows glowing in the dark. They used to feel like judgment. Now, they are just light. As I look back on it all, one thought stays with me. When someone destroys your name, don't rush to scream. Just wait. The truth doesn't need an audience, only time. Because in the end, it wasn't anger that saved me. It was dignity. It was knowing who I was even when everyone else forgot. And maybe that's what justice really is, not revenge, not punishment, but the moment you stop needing anyone's belief to stand tall again.